Welcome all the way. We now welcome all the way from Adelaide. She's flown here especially. Would you welcome Reverend Phyllis? Welcome along, Phyllis.
Thank you, Bill. And it's always lovely to join you in Melbourne. And it's lovely to hear that you've got a sunny day there as well, as we have too. So it's always lovely to see the sun. So what's in the bag? Well, before I get there, let me say there are many books written about spiritual laws. I have a book on Kindle written by one of my classmates' wives, who also is a minister, and it's called The Handbook of Spiritual Laws. And the author, Lauren McLaughlin, describes how she used 10 spiritual laws and made such a difference in her life and the lives of others by using each one of them in different situations. So the spiritual laws that she particularly writes about in her book are gratitude, kindness, compassion, forgiveness, trust, imagination, giving and receiving as one, intention, prayer, and affirmation. All excellent tools to use and can help us in our spiritual lives. I also have the book of Deepak Chopra, The 7 Spiritual Laws of Success, in which he describes ways that we can use those laws to create success in our lives. Another one that I have in my library is Edwin Gaines' 4 Spiritual Laws of Prosperity. Again, a wonderful book to read and practice the principles that she suggests in those books. And of course, it's all very well to read these books, and often I'm guilty of this. I read the books and think, yes, wonderful, 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 and then not put into practice the things that I have read. I don't know whether you can put your hand up to that, but I know I'm guilty of that. But the 5th law in Unity's principles is knowing and understanding the laws of life, whether it be prosperity or success, whatever it is. They're all principles and laws that we can use in our life. But knowing and understanding them is not enough. A person must also live the truth that he or she knows. And that can be challenging. I'm sure we all know the 5 principles that Unity teaches and practices, but do we always live by them? I doubt it, because the humanness of us wants to get involved rather than the spiritual self. But today I have 7 simple objects all in my little bag. And these 7 little objects, most of which can be found in any household in Australia or even around the world, and they can remind us of a simple practice that will help us to enjoy each and every day more fully, and more fulfilled. And that helps us to live the truths that we understand. So, what's in the bag? Well, it's a little bag that I received many years ago when I was in the States, and it's called a daily survival kit. Now, I don't know whether you can read that, but that's what's written in. And inside this little book is an illustrate or a description of what each of the items in this little bag represents. So let's have a look. What have we got in the bag? The first item that I'm going to take out is one we may not use it quite so much these days because floss has taken over, but it's a toothpick. But sometimes in a situation, the floss isn't appropriate, so a toothpick is still very handy. So what does that remind us of? It's to remind us to pick out the very good qualities in others as well as ourselves. Too often, we focus our attention on the attributes that we do not like in others or even in ourselves. And if the toothpick doesn't remind you to do that, then maybe you need to get As a little boy in our daily word picture said, pick up a magnifying glass and look more closely to find those things in the other or yourself that are worth celebrating. So we may need even to remind ourselves in looking through the magnifying glass or using the toothpick that we are all fully human and fully divine. And that no matter what we think of the other or even ourselves, if we remember that, that's at least one thing we can pick out that is good. We are divine individuals expressing through our humanness that level of consciousness that we have. And we need to remember that we are all on a journey of transformation, and that can happen quickly or not so quickly, depending on the individual and, again, their level of consciousness. Okay, so what's the next item? The next little item in here is one that I get frequently when I go shopping for greengroceries. It's a rubber band. I don't know whether you can see that very well, but it's a rubber band. I pick up asparagus and broccolini and bok choy, all bundled with a rubber band. So I'm constantly being reminded to be flexible. Be flexible. We don't always want to be flexible. We want to stick to our opinions and everything, but we need to remind ourselves that we need to be flexible. Being flexible is about having a positive attitude and looking to see the whole picture, or simply being open to a new experience or learning opportunity. Often when I come across a detour in the road, I might grumble and mumble and complain, oh, this is going to take me long to get where I want to go. But so often I find that that detour will take me into places that I would not otherwise not seen. And I'm often amazed at the beauty that I'm exposed to because of the detour. And so I'm always grateful for that. And I'm also grateful for the fact that they have set up the detour to keep myself as the driver in the car and the workmen who have needed to close the road off safe. We need to remember those things often and be flexible about detours. Another way of being flexible I find in my life is if I'm going to the same destination, say a family that lives in another part of Adelaide, or I'm going to a friend who lives elsewhere, I endeavour to take a different route to get there. And that way I'm exposing myself again to a different part of Adelaide that I would otherwise not see if I took the same route every time. And that's pretty easy in Adelaide. I don't know how it works in Melbourne, but if we do take a little bit of a detour, one that we've chosen to make, we can generally find our way to where we want to go within the same length of time, because the city has been set up in such a way that that is easy to do. So that's another way of being flexible. So being flexible in our thinking, our attitudes, being open to change is a way of being flexible. So that's what the rubber band tells us to do. So what's next? The pencil. So what does the pencil remind us of? I'm sure you've got plenty of these, or pens, pen, pencil, whatever. It is to remind us to list those blessings in our daily lives, to be open to looking at what's the blessing in our life. Gratitude is a very powerful spiritual tool. And when we look for the blessings in all situations, our lives are prospered in many ways. Charles Fillmore, in The Revealing Word, says gratitude and thanksgiving are both necessary in demonstrating prosperity through divine law. He goes on to say, all metaphysicians have found that thanksgiving for whatever we have increases the inflow. Gratitude, he says, is a great mind magnet, and when it is experienced from a spiritual standpoint, it is powerfully augmented. Words which express thanks, gratitude, and praise release energy of mind and soul. And he says, the custom of saying grace at the table before our meal has its origin in man's attempt to use this power of increase. I wonder how many of us take that time to say thanks for the food that we are about to eat and the nourishment that it will provide our body. And for all the people who have brought that food to our table in one way or another. Remember in Thessalonians, I'll get that word right one of these days, chapter 5, 16 to 18, it tells us to rejoice always, pray continually, and give thanks in all circumstances. Not some, but all circumstances. So the pencil is to remind us to give thanks. And often a good practice I have found is to, at the end of the day, sit and write at least 10 things that we have been grateful for that have happened or we have experienced during the day, or that are actually part of our daily lives. Just write them down. The writing of them makes them so much more powerful. So what's next? Something we may not use quite so often these days, because most of us use our computers to write things out these days, letters and everything. But it's an eraser. And I do have one on my desk. This is a new one, but I have a very old one that's been in my life for many, many years. But I put a new one in the bag just to remind us to rub out any errors that we make or others that we perceive have made against us. We all make mistakes. And we have to make that okay, provided the mistake hasn't really injured somebody else. The important thing to remember is that a mistake is a reminder that we can do better, and we are wise to affirm our intention to not make a similar mistake in future. And again, I quote Charles, he has wonderful words of wisdom. Let the finger of denial erase every sin or falling short that you have charged against yourself. Pay your debt by saying to that part of yourself which you think has fallen short, see, you are well, sin no more, that nothing worse befalls you. Then loose him and let him go. So we need to remember that we all make mistakes, we make errors, we say the wrong thing at the wrong time and maybe upset somebody. So the very first thing we need is to be willing to correct it. And under the law of forgiveness, man can erase those mistakes quite easily. Often we are the last person that we will forgive. And yet it is very important to forgive ourselves our mistakes and move on. And as I said before, claim the intention that we will endeavour not to make that mistake again. Likewise, it is important to forgive others when we feel they have made a mistake that has affected us in some ways. So remember, the eraser reminds us to erase the mistake you have made, to forgive others of any perceived mistake that you have made just as soon as you can. So what's next in the little bag? We're getting to the end. The next one is a mint. Well, why a mint? Well, this is to remind us that we are worth a mint. When I looked up synonyms for this word in my thesaurus, it told me that other words, it can also mean perfect, unblemished, untarnished, excellent, and first class. Too often we underestimate our worth. So we need to be reminded that each one of us is worthy and an important part of the whole. Again, I go to Charles Fillmore, who has wonderful, great words of wisdom for us when he said, "Do not feel unworthy. No one is ever hopeless until he is resigned to his imagined fate." His imagined fate. However, how often do we ourselves think we're not worthy of this, that, or something else? So Charles Fillmore reminds us that no one is ever hopeless until he is resigned to his imagined fate. He then goes on to say, each of us is formed in the perfection of the divine idea man. Remember, Jesus demonstrated that divine idea of man and often reminded us that we too can do the things he did. If at any time you feel unworthy, remind yourself you are worth a mint, because your body is the temple of the living God. It is not material. It is spiritual and perfect in all its being. By seeing perfection in all things, we help make it manifest. So let the mint remind you and me that we are very worthy of living the life we were meant to live, filled with joy, laughter, prosperity, and of course, love. So what's next? The next item is something I took a long time to find. If you've been to America, you may have come across these. They are candy kisses. It's a little bit hard for you to see. It's a chocolate made by Hershey's. Now, I looked everywhere for one of these because this talk has been sitting around in my head for a long time, but this was the missing link. I couldn't get my candy kiss. And I went to lunch with my youngest daughter and her son during the school holidays, and they hadn't long come back from America, and I had asked them if they could source some candy kisses for me. Now, Bo, my grandson, 17-year-old grandson, was all excited because he had come back with what he thought it was that I had asked his mother to source for me. And he handed a packet of Reese's chocolates over to me. He said, "This is what you wanted, isn't it, Nana?" He was so excited. And I felt a little bit hard in saying, well, no, but I'm so grateful for these. I know I'll enjoy them. But I said, what I really wanted was candy kisses. And he looked at me and he said, "Nana, you can buy them here in Adelaide." And I said, "Really?" Now, I have lived most of my life. I've travelled a fair bit, but I have lived more years in Adelaide than I have anywhere else. I never knew this particular store existed right in the heart of Adelaide. And they stock mostly American confectionery. And it took my 17-year-old grandson to introduce me to a store that has been there for years. So I was able to get the missing link for my talk, the candy kiss. So what does this remind us of? It reminds us that everyone needs a hug or a kiss every day. Now, if you can't get hold of a candy kiss to experience the joy of eating one, then, and if you live on your own, you may need to access a cuddly toy so that you can give the cuddly toy a hug. We all respond to a hug. Now, you might think that by hugging a bear, you're not getting any warm fuzzies, but believe me, just by hugging a soft, cuddly toy, I feel warm fuzzies. And so that's one way those of us who live on our own can give ourselves a hug every day, or if we've got access to candy kisses, we can give ourselves a kiss every day. So we all respond to a little TLC, and sometimes we have to provide that for ourselves. So we need to give ourselves that loving, tender care. And when in the company of others, practice the golden rule, which is, in Jesus' words, found in Matthew 7:12, says, in everything, do to others as you would have them do to you. For this is the law and the prophets. Now, this is such a profound teaching that it is found in most major religions, slightly different words, but the meaning is exactly the same. So this is another very important spiritual practice that benefits not only our spiritual well-being, but our physical and emotional well-being too. One quote I found regarding a hug a day, and I just love this, says, a hug returns back to you right away like a boomerang. And isn't that so? When you offer a hug to someone, it comes back to you immediately. So offer a kiss or a cuddle to yourself or a loved one or even a friend, and reward yourself with the warm fuzzies. So lastly, in the bag, we have a tea bag. Now, this tea bag reminds us to do exactly what this one is there to remind us of, to relax. It's such an important thing to do that it is the very first step in our 5-step prayer process in unity. When turning our attention to prayer or meditation, relaxing the body and mind are an important part to the process. Charles Fillmore reminds us that divine mind is always harmonious and peaceful. And when our intention is to align with divine mind through prayer or meditation, we need to bring our consciousness into alignment with divine mind. And relaxation of the body and mind help us to be open to guidance from within. Often in the midst of our busy days, we may not feel we have time to go into a long meditation, but it is wise to relax periodically. That's why people take a coffee or a tea break during their busy days so that they can relax. Let go of the busyness of the business world or the daily life, and just relax and release. I find it very, very rewarding just to take 5 minutes, 10 minutes perhaps, particularly when I'm doing a talk or working on notes for a class. I get to a point when the inspiration just seems to stop. Where to now? So I take 5, 10 minutes away, have myself a cup of tea or a cup of coffee, and just let all of that go, and maybe go for a walk in the garden, have a look and see what's in flower, and then come back to the computer And invariably, the inspiration comes back simply by taking that time to relax. So the tea bag is a reminder to relax. So we have the toothpick to remind us to pick out the very good things, the qualities in ourselves and in others. Next, we had the rubber band to remind us to be flexible, to be open to change, to open to changing our minds. Next was the pencil to remind us to notice those things that are blessings in our life and make a note of all the things we are grateful for. Next, we had the eraser to erase the mistakes that we have made and be willing to erase our anger or unease of mistakes others have made. So we need to erase them and forgive and use our affirmations. Next, we had the mint to remind us that we are worthy. We are worth a mint. While I was sitting having my coffee this morning, I thought about the mint and I thought, you know, I wonder if the people who used to put mints on their receptionist tables understood they were telling us we are worth a mint. But anyway, that was an aside. The next thing was the candy kiss or the teddy bear. And that's to remind us to be loving to ourselves and to others. And lastly, we had the tea bag to remind us to relax. And that's exactly what I'm going to ask you to do right now. I invite you to join me in a moment of quiet relaxation and meditation. Find yourself a comfortable position if you're not already comfortable, and maybe the fact that you've been sitting still for a little while, you may need to give your body a little bit of a shake to relax all the parts of your body that may be feeling a little bit tense. Placing your feet flat on the floor, if they're not already, is always a good thing. Legs uncrossed is most helpful. And if you haven't done so already, gently close your eyes or lower your gaze. And let that simple act of closing your eyes or lowering your gaze signal turning your attention away from the outer to the inner world of peace and harmony. Now I invite you to focus on your breath, noticing the in-breath and the out-breath, and the movement of air as you do that through your lungs. We know this is an act that we do unconsciously all the time, but let's be conscious of that deep breath in, and as you release that breath, allow yourself to relax even deeper and be more aware of any tensions in your body that you can release and let go. Now I invite you to take another deep breath in, and as you release that breath, practice being present right here, right now. And now take another deep breath. And as you let that breath go, open your heart and your mind to your divine inner being. And as you continue being mindful of each breath in and each breath out, You may also wish to repeat the steps of relaxation, being present, and opening up your mind and heart to the divine within. If you find your mind wandering off, just return to focusing on the breath. Allowing yourself to fully relax into this moment and continuing to be aware of the breath. Take your focus to the heart center, imagining each breath moving in and through the heart center. And as you do see that breath moving through the heart center, see the light of love and understanding spreading from your heart center through your body to bless and harmonize every cell, every fiber of your being. Now see that inner light of love and understanding moving out from your heart center to bless all those who are carers, doctors, nurses, paramedics, and all emergency workers, that we know that in times of need are always there to offer care and support. Now see that light of love and understanding move out into the world to bless all those whom you love, all those who are in need of healing and comfort. As you continue focusing on the breath, moving through the heart center, give thanks for the life energy that breath infuses into your body. Feel the joy of knowing you are fully present and you are fully human and fully divine in every now moment. Let us contemplate this wonderful truth of the truth of our being as we rest for a few moments of stillness and quiet. In stillness, quiet, and peace. as we gently bring our attention back to this time and this place, let us give thanks for this opportunity to come together. I invite you to quietly express at least one thing for which you are grateful. Let us all be grateful for every sacred moment that allows us to learn and grow and express more of our divine nature. Let us also give thanks for our body temple, through which we can express our divine nature. And let us, of course, give thanks for life and life abundant. And so it is. Amen.